abusive alcoholic family. Daddy was an advertising executive and highly successful, so as long as the white picket fence is there and Labrador retrievers barking and you go to the country club, all is well. Although that wasn't my experience when I found drugs and alcohol at a very young age. That became my solution, and opiates became part of that story when I tore my rotator cuff and was prescribed the delicious oxycodone.
Heat. It rises from the cracked asphalt like a physical weight, carrying with it the scent of a city in distress. Imagine for a moment that you are standing in the center of the American experiment. You are under the roaring elevated train tracks of Kensington Avenue in Philadelphia, or perhaps walking the desolate blocks of the Tenderloin in San Francisco. It is Tuesday afternoon in the year 2025. To your left, the world of commerce grinds on. Delivery drones buzz overhead and autonomous vehicles navigate the grid. But turn your gaze downward, just a few feet away, and the timeline fractures. You are no longer in a modern metropolis. You are in a zone of humanitarian collapse. The sunlight seems to struggle to reach the pavement here. The air is thick, replaced by a cloying, heavy miasma. It is the ammonia tang of urine, the sickly sweet rot of discarded food, and something sharper. Chemical burning. It is the distinct, acrid smoke of synthetic opioids. You hear it before you see it. A wet, choking cough, the sound of someone drowning on dry land. You look down, and there, curled against the cold brick of a boarded-up storefront, is a human being. Maybe it is a woman. Her age impossible to tell because the streets have aged her decades in just a few years. Her skin is pale, stretched taut over bone. Her hands are swollen, fingers darkened by necrosis, the tissue dying while she is still alive. She is clutching a dirty blanket as if it is the only thing tethering her to the earth. She is not asleep. She is not awake. She is suspended in a chemical twilight.
And staying connected to them, giving them the opportunity to access treatment if they want it, to get clean supplies for their wounds, and safer injection kits and safer smoking kits. It helps lower infectious diseases spreading, and
This is not a scene from a dystopian movie about the end of the world. This is America today. This is the reality that millions walk past, drive around, and try desperately to ignore. But the crisis on our streets is no longer something we can ignore. It is not just about a lack of housing. It is about a poisoning of the drug supply so severe it is being called a weapon of mass destruction. It is about an economic system that has pulled the ladder up behind it, leaving our elderly and our working poor to freeze in their cars. And it is about a society that has decided, implicitly, that some lives simply matter less than others. Welcome to Homeless U.S. News. We are dedicated to shining a light on the invisible crisis gripping our nation. Today, we are going deep. Over the next hour, we are going to dissect this disaster layer by layer. We will take you into the neurology of the addicted brain, exploring why the new drug metatomidine known on the streets as Rhino Trank is baffling doctors and rendering Narcan useless. We will examine the economics of the housing market that created the silver tsunami of homeless seniors. We will analyze the politics of the police sweeps following the Supreme Court's Grants Pass ruling. And we will walk the geography of despair from the alleys of Philadelphia to the encampments of the West Coast. We will ask the hard questions. Why, in the richest country on earth, are our sidewalks turning into open-air graveyards? And more importantly, is there any way back? This is the story.
So
you haven't been doing it
We've
here.
done it every single night, right there.
When?
You want me to show you video footage of it?
I would love to.
Okay.
The chemistry of extinction, from Trank to the Rhino, to understand why this crisis feels different in 2025, why the number of people on the streets seems to be exploding, and why they seem so much sicker, so much more zombie-like than before. We have to start with the science. We have to look at the molecules that have hijacked the American street. For decades, the primary threat was heroin. Heroin was dangerous, yes. It destroyed lives, But the crisis of today is driven by a toxic evolution of synthetic chemistry that moves faster than legislation can keep up. First came fentanyl, a synthetic opioid synthesized in a lab, designed to be a powerful painkiller for surgery and end-of-life care. Chemically, it is perfect at what it does. It binds to the mu-opioid receptors in the human brain with a force 50 times greater than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. Because it is highly lipophilic, meaning it dissolves in fat, it crosses the blood-brain barrier. Almost instantly, it floods the brain's reward center, the nucleus accumbens, with a tidal wave of dopamine, rewriting the brain's survival hierarchy. It tells the brain that the drug is more important than food, water, or love. But by 2023, fentanyl was no longer enough for the cartels. They began cutting it with xylazine, a veterinary sedative known as tranq. Xylazine is not an opioid. It is a central nervous system depressant used to sedate 1,000-pound horses. It causes severe vasoconstriction, clamping down on blood vessels and starving the skin of oxygen. This created the era of the flesh-eating drug, where users developed necrotic, gaping wounds that looked like chemical burns, leading to a surge in amputations. Now, in late 2024 and into 2025, we have entered a new, darker phase, the era of medetomidine. Street sources and toxicologists in Philadelphia and Chicago are reporting a massive shift. Medetomidine is a synthetic sedative similar to xylazine, but it is 100 to 200 times more potent. It is often referred to as rhino tranq. By late 2024, samples in Philadelphia showed medetomidine presence skyrocketing to 87% of the drug supply, effectively replacing xylazine. Unlike fentanyl, which kills by stopping your breathing, medetomidine kills by stopping your heart. It causes severe bradycardia, slowing the heart rate to dangerous levels. It causes extreme hypotension, dropping blood pressure until the user passes out in a deep, coma-like state that can last for hours. This presents a terrifying problem for first responders. You probably know about naloxone or Narcan. It is the miracle spray that reverses opioid overdoses. But naloxone only works on opioids. It has absolutely no effect on medetomidine or xylazine. Imagine a paramedic arriving at a scene in Kensington. They find a person slumped over, blue in the face. They administer Narcan. The person's breathing might improve slightly because the fentanyl is blocked, but they do not wake up. They remain in a deep, chemical coma caused by the medetomidine. They are defenseless. They are vulnerable to assault, to the elements, and to robbery while they lie there, breathing but unable to wake up. This polysubstance crisis has fundamentally changed the nature of addiction. Users report that the high is no longer euphoric. It is simply an erasure of consciousness. They use it to black out, to fast forward through the misery of their lives on the street. And the withdrawal? It is a nightmare of anxiety, tremors, and seizures that traditional detox centers are not equipped to handle. This is the chemical reality of the street today. It is a trap that has no key, and it is evolving faster than we can forge one. The displacement illusion, the failure of the sweep. If the chemistry is the invisible killer, the policy response is the visible failure. In May of 2024, the city of Philadelphia launched a massive operation that was hailed as a turning point. It was called an encampment resolution. The target was the notorious stretch of Kensington Avenue, the epicenter of the East Coast's open-air drug market. For years, this avenue was a dystopian tunnel of tents, needles, and human suffering. The new administration, under Mayor Sherelle Parker, promised to restore order. Police and sanitation crews arrived at dawn. They dismantled the tents. They power-washed the sidewalks. They erected metal barricades to prevent people from sitting or sleeping there. On paper, the city declared a victory. The sidewalks were clear. The visual blight was gone. But we returned in 2025 to ask the hard question: where did the people go? Investigative reports and local testimony reveal a devastating truth. The market did not disappear. It dispersed. It is a phenomenon known as the balloon effect. You squeeze the problem in one place, and it bulges out in another. The hundreds of people who lived on those blocks migrated. They moved to the side streets of Port Richmond and Harrogate. They moved into the dangerous underpasses of the I-95 corridor. They moved into abandoned row homes where they are at a much higher risk of dying from an overdose, because no one can see them to call for help. We spoke to a harm reduction worker named Elena who works in the area. We used to know exactly where our patients were, she told us. We could walk down the avenue and check on their wounds, give them clean supplies, make sure they were alive. Nah, they are ghosts. They are hiding in alleyways, terrified of the police. We are finding bodies days later because they were using alone in the dark. This strategy of containment and dispersal is being repeated in cities across America. In San Francisco, multi-agency crackdowns in the Tenderloin have arrested hundreds of users and dealers, yet the overdose rate remains catastrophic. In Phoenix, the zone was cleared, scattering thousands into the surrounding neighborhoods. The logic behind these sweeps is often political. City leaders are under immense pressure from business owners and residents to clean up the streets, and visibly, they succeed. But socially and medically, they fail. They disrupt the fragile networks of survival that homeless people build. They destroy vital documents, IDs, birth certificates, medical records that are essential for getting into housing. When a sanitation crew throws a homeless person's tent into a garbage truck, they are not just taking their shelter, they are often taking their lifeline. Without an ID, you cannot get a job. Without an ID, you cannot get housing. Without an ID, you are a non-person in the eyes of the state. The sweeps of 2024 and 25 have proven one thing. You cannot wrest your way out of a public health crisis. You cannot sweep away human beings. When you push them out of sight, you do not solve the problem. You simply make it deadlier. The economic exile, the silver tsunami. While the media focuses on the drug crisis, a quieter, perhaps even more tragic demographic shift is occurring in America's homeless population. It is not driven by addiction. It is driven by math. We are witnessing the rise of the silver tsunami. In 2025, the fastest growing group of homeless individuals is not young men. It is seniors, men and women over the age of 55. People who worked their whole lives, raised families, and paid taxes, only to find themselves sleeping in their cars in their golden years. The cause is a brutal collision of fixed incomes and soaring rents. The average Social Security check in the United States is around $1,900 a month. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in cities like Los Angeles, Miami, or New York is often well over $2,000. Do the math. It is impossible. We met Robert, a 68-year-old former mechanic in San Diego. His hands are stained with the grease of 40 years of labor. He receives a pension and Social Security. But after his wife passed away and his medical bills from a heart attack piled up, he fell behind on rent. His landlord raised the rent by $300 a month legal, under local laws, and Robert was evicted. "I never thought I'd be here," Robert told us, sitting in the passenger seat of his 2012 sedan, which is now his bedroom, kitchen, and living room. "I fixed cars my whole life. I paid my dues. Now I park in a Walmart lot and hope the security guard doesn't knock on the window. I'm not an addict. I'm not crazy. I'm just priced out of existence." Robert represents the economic exiles. These are people who did everything right, according to the social contract, but the contract was broken. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition reports that in 2025, there's no state in the U.S. where a worker earning minimum wage can afford a modest two-bedroom rental home working a standard 40-hour week. In states like Ohio, the housing wage, the amount you need to earn to afford rent, has hit over $22 an hour, while the minimum wage lags far behind. This economic reality forces people into the hidden homeless category. They are not intense. They are couch surfing. They are living in motels until the money runs out. They are living in vehicles. In rural areas like Appalachia and the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio, this crisis is invisible. There are no sidewalks to sleep on. Instead, families live in dilapidated campers tucked away in the woods. or in cars parked down long gravel roads. They are disconnected from the services that exist in the cities. They are the forgotten poor. The silver tsunami is a moral indictment of our society. We are allowing our elders, the people who built this country, to spend their final years freezing in parking lots because we have prioritized real estate profits over human dignity. The legal war, the era of grants pass. As the numbers of homeless rise, the legal landscape has shifted dramatically to criminalize them. The turning point came in June of 2024, with the Supreme Court's ruling in the case of City of Grants Pass v. Johnson. For years, legal precedent held that cities could not punish homeless people for sleeping outside if there were no shelter beds available. It was a basic protection. You cannot criminalize a biological necessity. If a person has nowhere to go, they must be allowed to sleep somewhere. But the Supreme Court overturned this, ruling that cities can enforce bans on sleeping in public, even if shelters are full. This ruling was the starting gun for a wave of aggressive legislation in 2025. Cities across America, emboldened by the court, began passing strict anti-camping ordinances. In Kentucky, a law was passed that allows the use of deadly force against trespassers who are camping on private property, a terrifying escalation of rhetoric. In Florida, legislation was introduced to mandate that homeless individuals be moved to state-run encampments, far from city centers, effectively creating internment camps for the poor. In Ohio, towns like Newark and Heath passed bans on sleeping in public, threatening jail time for repeat offenders. This is the criminalization of poverty. We spoke to a legal advocate in Los Angeles who explained the cycle. When you arrest someone for sleeping on the sidewalk, you aren't solving homelessness, she said. You are making it permanent. You arrest them. They go to jail for a few days. They get a criminal record. They get fines they can't pay. Now, they have a record that disqualifies them from housing vouchers and jobs. You have taken a person who is struggling and pushed them into a hole they can never climb out of. This approach is expensive. It costs thousands of dollars to process an arrest, house an inmate, and cycle them through the courts. Studies have consistently shown that it is cheaper to provide supportive housing than to police homelessness. But housing takes time, and arrests are immediate. For politicians looking to clean up before an election, the choice is often clear: choose the handcuffs. This legal war creates a permanent underclass. It brands the homeless as criminals, justifying further harsh treatment. It strips them of their status as citizens and reduces them to nuisances to be managed, moved, or erased. Ground Zero, the neighborhoods of ghosts. To truly understand the human cost of these policies, you have to spend time in the places where the system has collapsed completely. Let's return to the Tenderloin in San Francisco. In 2025, this neighborhood is a containment zone. The streets are lined with people who have been pushed here from other parts of the city. The air is filled with the sound of sirens and the murmur of drug transactions. But amidst the chaos, there is a desperate community. We met a woman named Lisa, who runs a makeshift safe haven in her tent. She keeps Narcan, clean water, and bandages. She watches over the younger women, trying to protect them from the predators who circle the encampments like sharks. We look out for each other because no one else will, Lisa told us. People think we're animals. They don't see that we share our food. We share our blankets. When someone dies, we mourn them. We are a family, even if it's a broken one. In Kensington, the community is equally complex. There are the families who live in the row homes, trying to raise children amidst the open-air drug market. They are trapped too. They cannot afford to move. They have to walk their children past bodies on the sidewalk to get to school. I tell my son to look straight ahead, says Maria, a mother of two in Kensington. I tell him, don't look down. Just keep walking. But how can you not look? It's right there. It's our front yard. The trauma here is collective. It affects the unhoused and the housed alike. It is a community suffering from a form of PTSD. The constant ambulance sirens, the sight of death, the fear of violence, it wears down the soul. And yet, the zombie narrative persists on social media. Viral videos show people in the metatomidine nod, standing frozen, bent at the waist. These videos garner millions of views, but they rarely result in help. They turn human suffering into a spectacle. They allow the viewer to detach, to see the people of Kensington or Skid Row as monsters rather than as patients. This stigma is a barrier to recovery. When you believe the world hates you, you hate yourself. And when you hate yourself, why would you try to save yourself? The broken lifeline. Is there a way out? So, is there any hope? For the last decade, the gold standard of homelessness policy was housing first. The idea is simple and radical. You give a homeless person a permanent home first. You do not demand they get sober first. You do not demand they get a job first. You give them a key. Once they are safe, once they are warm, you layer on the support services, the mental health care, the addiction treatment, the job training. The data proves it works. In Houston, Texas, the city reduced homelessness by over 60% in 10 years by aggressively implementing housing first. In Finland, the only country in Europe where homelessness is falling, housing first is the national policy. But in 2025, the housing first model in America is facing a crisis of its own. The funding cliff. Much of the progress made in recent years was fueled by federal pandemic relief funds, the American Rescue Plan. But those dollars have expired. Cities like Houston and Columbus are facing massive budget deficits. Without that federal money, they cannot issue new housing vouchers. The pipeline from the street to housing has slowed to a trickle. We are seeing a return to treatment first or enforcement first models, which demand sobriety before housing. But medical experts agree, you cannot rehab in a tent. You cannot cure trauma while creating new trauma every night on the sidewalk. There are flickers of light. The street medicine movement is growing. Doctors and nurses are leaving hospitals to treat patients under bridges, building trust and saving limbs from amputation. Tiny home villages, like Vista Village in Columbus, are providing dignified, transitional housing at a fraction of the cost of traditional shelters. But these are band-aids on a gaping wound. Without a massive, federal recommitment to affordable housing and mental health care, these efforts will remain small-scale miracles in a sea of tragedy. The call to conscience. So here we are. We have walked through the valley of the shadow of death. We have seen the chemistry of metatomidine, the cruelty of the sweeps, and the quiet desperation of the elderly living in their cars. The story of homelessness in America in 2025 is not a simple story of drugs or bad choices. It is a story of a system that has failed. It is a story of a housing market that serves profit, not people. It is a story of a healthcare system that treats addiction as a crime, not a disease. We are at a crossroads. We can continue down the path we are on. We can continue to build higher fences, pass harsher laws, and pretend that if we can't see the poor, they don't exist. We can let our cities become fortresses of wealth surrounded by seas of misery. Or we can choose differently. We can choose to see the human being behind the addiction. We can choose to demand that our tax dollars go to housing, not handcuffs. We can choose to support the organizations, the street medics, the outreach workers, the shelters that are doing the work that the government has failed to do. You have a role to play in this. Do not let this video be just another thing you watch and forget. When you walk down the street tomorrow and you see someone slumped in a doorway, do not look away. Look at them. They are someone's son, someone's daughter, someone's mother. They are human beings who have fallen into a hole that our society dug, and they are waiting for a hand to pull them out. If you believe that no one in the richest country in the world should die alone on the concrete, then make your voice heard. Share this story. Challenge the stigma. Be the change you want to see in your city. This is Homeless US News. We will not stop watching. We will not stop reporting. And we will not let them be forgotten. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Now, go out there and be someone's miracle.